In 1, 2, 3, you're live.
Live.
Yeah, see live. Hello, everyone. Again, it's Ali here, the founder of the International Youth Conference and advisor to the Youth Representative Steering Committee of the UN Department of Global Communications and a representative to the United Nations for AFS. This session is this whole day is very important because it's the first day of the IYC and it's the International Peace Day as well. And all the topics that you are seeing today are related to human right, peace, and development. And then countering violent extremism is also the part of it, and it's a very important topic. Why it's important and crucial to discuss, because we have been facing a lot of things in the world from past 2 or 3 decades, or even way more from them, and we have seen different form of extremism, but we are not ready to talk about this on such platforms, especially among young people. Right now, there are like over 2.2 billion young people who are under the age of 24. I'm telling you, the figure of 2.2 are under the age of 24, and I'm not even counting the figure that is from 24 to 35. UN have its age now extended to 35 years old. Like many departments says that the age of young people is under the age of 35, and they make a huge part of the world, the population, especially when we talk about the global south, the Middle East, and the Far East, the areas that are most affected with the extremism of all sorts. And the population over there is over 68% population is under the age of 35. So it is a large population. We're talking about three continents, Africa whole. We're talking about Middle East. We're talking about South Asia and Far East. So this conversation need to take place somewhere somehow. We were trying to have this conversation since past three editions, and we will find the speakers to speak on this topic. And we, even at this time when we invited the speakers, they agreed, and then they're like, no. I mean, this is a very hard topic, and because they'll be having a conversation on such topic, and they might not want to come into the bad light for the bad people, the bad light of the bad people or such things. So, but we need to start this conversation, and we are starting. And even such conversations do not take place inside the UN headquarters. So I think somehow having this platform where UN is completely on board, we are having this conversation. We need to talk about this, that how young people need to come out and counter all sorts of violent extremism that exists. Either it's hate online, either it's on racism, either it's based on religion, either it's based on caste, or anywhere. We're seeing all sorts of extremism that are somehow the disasters. We're seeing the political extremism and everything. So we need young people to come out and counter that. To speak with that, well, we have Dr. Bass with us from Humanitarian Focus Foundation, and she have other affiliation, and she have her own experience on working with youth on the topic, and which is really really important, and wonderful colleague. And then we have Ms. Hiram Reen, who is originally from Pakistan and happened to be the trainer on the youth countering violent extremism in the University of Karachi in Pakistan. That's my alma mater as well. So welcome to both of you. To speak on the topic, first I would like to give the floor to you, Dr. Bass. Introduce yourself and then.
Uh, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depend where you are listening to us today. My name is Andres Bass. I'm a Global Peace Ambassador. I focus most likely on the Caribbean. And right now, as you can see, we have a big conflict between Dominican Republic and Haiti. And I'm traveling Saturday to see how we can get one word we can come into a conclusion what we can do to avoid certain violence. I also teach on the peace building for youth, which is very important because I think communication starts to avoid extremism. I'm the founder of Humanitarian Focus Foundation and also the founder and director for the Institute of Public Policy and Diplomacy Research, which is important because most of the time they have a lot of resolution who pass, but they never have implementation. Without policy, you cannot put any resolution. They have to get somebody who is responsible, transparency, and accountability. That's what policy does. And when you finish to get that, that's the way diplomacy comes, to know exactly how you can manage to have those diplomacy, and that's the way we can have a bridge. We need to have the bridge. The bridge of diplomacy is to connect private sector, government, and civil society. That's the way. We don't have to disrespect nobody. Stay on the same line. What we can cross the same bridge to do what we're supposed to do for humanity.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Hiramri. I'm the visiting faculty at University of Karachi, and I have been a part of counter-violence extremism projects for past 5 years, and have been on board with multiple government organizations as a panelist for working on youth extremism tolerance for the public affairs universities. And when we talk about in larger canvas, bringing the core culture from South Asia, we have multiple cultures within one country and values and traditions that conflict with each others. And when it comes to public affairs and student unions, this is very important for all of us to make peace building and form a community, because what we stands for is making a community with the same principles and same characteristics, where humanitarian values are valued and peace building is continuously practicing. So where we come from those canvases, we feel like there are different cultures that have those extremism violations between them, and how we figure it out when those youth come towards the universities to studies for the degree, but come up with fighting each other with their cultures and traditions. And we have to form as a nation to be very strong and build on some principles, following some curriculums. And yeah, I'm practicing those and going to the policy analysis conclusions of having some original debate on this idea. And yeah, looking forward for the conversation ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Zhao from UNFPA, United Nations Fund for Population Activity. He himself have been part of some youth networks previously before joining UNFPA, and important agency UNFPA works with young people very closely, who do the stats and do a lot of work with young people, especially in Global South. So, Zhao, over to you for your introduction and a few words on the topic.
Thank you very much, Ali, and hi, colleague. First, apologies for not being able to join you in person. Unfortunately, this week is very intense, so I have a couple of events here. I couldn't go all the way there. But thank you for the opportunity. As Ali mentioned, so my name is Jonas Carperini. I am here at the headquarters of UNFPA. I specifically manage the file on youth, peace, and security, which is our work to basically support youth leadership in peace building. But just to say that I'm particularly excited about this conversation because my previous role was actually targeting young people in the PCV context of prevention and countering violent extremism in Somalia. And so I'm hoping to bring a little bit of both those two aspects to this conversation. If I may just say, I think what is important when we're talking about violent extremism is to understand that it's not as simple as black and white. There is a lot of nuances. I think it's very risky sometimes that for some member states or for some governments, the approach is to understand young people as a threat and to use violent extremism as a label that can basically criminalize young people, political participation, or youth-led organizations that are trying to have a voice. And so for us, it's always important to use the framework of youth, peace, and security and the Security Council resolutions on youth, peace, and security as a way to understand meaningful youth participation and to see how we can counter and prevent violent extremism but recognizing the agency of young people, protecting the rights to organize and to protest, and really making sure that the participation right is guaranteed. I'll finish here, but I'm happy to continue this conversation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. So I will start right with the question and a request from my colleagues, if they are in the room, Shurabi, because we have a lot of people from Global South online. They would post comments and questions. So people who are watching online, I want you to post the questions online, and then Shurabi will show them on the screen, and we will definitely take those questions. And our panelists online and in person will answer, including myself. So I'll start with you, Dr. Bas. Very important question, and the very basic one as well, that's part of this conversation, is like, how do you think young people individually first start countering violent extremism, while especially when they're online as well, like a lot of things going on?
Uh, when I was looking at this subject, it is a subject is like a lot of people doesn't even want to talk about. They're afraid because most of the time when the youth start talking, they it become like a threat for them. It's just like out of disrespect. I was there before. It's like hierarchy, and I'm trying to really have to got a different approach, especially when they get to the older generation who may not understand the way the new world is moving, to tell them respect the value and get a step back to explain, give it step by step and why. Because sometimes we just tell them, say, "Oh, I want you to change that," without tell them, okay, from 1970, this is the rules apply, and that's why it was applied. But right now, they have changed, and this is the change must be done. So if we start navigate with a good communication, and I believe in the youth, I believe they are the touch barrier of the movement. They inspire to change. They are social change ambassadors, but they have sometimes they don't know how to turn down a little bit the volume. They become aggressive, and certain people doesn't really understand the message. To avoid all those conflict, I always tell them, think you're going to drink water, swallow the water 3 times, and put the water out, it come out better. I did that exercise all the time. So somebody says something, I say, I'm going to take my time, like I'm drinking water, because after that, because you make a pause. When you make a pause, the word doesn't come out with the same way aggressive the way it's supposed to be. Now you start to say, it's not about put your point across. Because sometimes we're so frustrated. The youth sometimes is frustrated. I understand that too. Because you've been talking about the same thing, and nobody listen. Now, when you have the occasion to say it, you just put it out. And sometimes people can really think is a bad thing. And they, okay, next time I'm not going to put that words. And I don't know if you was looking at a perfect example. President Abinader was at Columbia University, and one of the youth was so, I think she would be put that thing on the mic for about a year. She couldn't wait for the president to come and she can really put her point across. But it become like at the beginning when she read it, he was good. But the fact she was so excited, it became a bad thing because they couldn't see the point across because excitement. I want the youth to know to cultivate what they say, compose and behavior and setback before you speak. Because when you take your time, you put your points across and let the person answer. Do not cut that person because that's what the atmosphere coming in. People think you're aggressive. The youth is so aggressive. I want them to learn also how to purvey that message because if you question for peace, you have to know how to make peace. Because peace starts by yourself. You have to get peace with the thing you're going to say. Repeat what you're going to say for yourself and to see how it come out. You accept it, you say, okay, if I can accept it, I'm going to make somebody else accept it. Do the acceptance. That's the when it come out to say, it's like I'm talking to a friend. You don't shout to your friend. You say your friend, okay, do you know, I don't like that dress.
Mhm.
And you say, I don't like that just because it doesn't look good. It's the same thing for any policy. You don't just impose it to people. You say it and you tell them why. And I think they will have a two-way communication. I may don't like it, but I will pretend I like it just because the way you say it.
Thank you. That is a very, very thoughtful answer, which left me thinking about so many things. We'll have more conversation behind after this. I have a very direct question with you because you come from the region and the country where a religion have to play a major role in extremism, and then it becomes so chaotic. Like and we have seen, I mean, I don't want to go into the details, but we have seen the dangers of when young people become affected by the ideologies and then they take it to too extreme. We see extremism in that region a lot, even not just Pakistan, all other like countries, and that they have created a chaos in the region. So what do you think that how you think we can pull out young people, as also from the perspective of a teacher but also perspective of a young people yourself, like what do you think how we can pull young people out of such paradox of the blind extremism and then going just way too extreme?
All right, that's a hardcore question.
I understand.
Yeah, but when you come from those backgrounds where religion is more important versus anything else, like the principles, the nationality, the culture, people play the religion part, and this means something too much to them that they do not know what to practice around them is individually as a person is important. And while it comes to deep rooted analysis, we feel and we check around and we research around as an individual also. The religion makes you a person who you are, and all the similar religion have the same practices, same characteristics, and same peace building principles, and same policies for humanitarian principles, right? But we as an individual are never opting the first discipline. We are just opting what we see around people and having this negative influence around it. And that comes around when it comes to the young people. People start poking each other. People start being vocal about things that are not practically one fulfills to do another on the point. Like for example, when I see about within my canvas of students, I have multi-diverse students coming from Hindu culture, people from countries from Africa, Somalia, Japan. They come to study as an international students. Then people from Pakistan, they have multiple religions, and then they're also divided into some of their extremism groups. And then coming to one page, they play that card, and the extremism definitely follows up when they start grouping up with the same person and trying to be more powerful over other person. And on that note, the curriculum within our culture, the disciplines and the values that we have as a religion also, and even in the specific religion, we all forget that. And when I see at myself coming and meeting people, the greetings left me over with the persons of first pairs appearance, that how they look, how they dress. This is something not good. This is something bad. This is something in my religion we don't do. We start judging people rather than their behavior, the way they dialogue about it, and over the persons how they appear. So it's very important as me as an individual and people around me is to dialogue about it. It comes about the communication, because until you do not let the ice melt it, you will never see what's the clear water have to tell you about, right? So that's very important to gather. And secondly, when these religion comes together within the power, they try to suppress each other. And that's why where we as a policy practitioner, we thought about it, that what we are doing wrong about extremism, and why we are not tolerating on those notes. So we as we thought about it, and we think how we're delivering the idea of tolerism, how we're delivering the idea of extremism in the society is very important. how we are letting this idea to celebrate each other's individual disciplines, individuals' cultures, festives is important. And we're not doing that. If there is some religion that have more power, we are maybe giving a public holiday. But for other, we are not respecting the same boundaries, or we are not even celebrating on the same conclusions and same community. And that's why it's important to understand that the whole idea of counter violence extremism is happened because we are not forming the community. We're not coming up with the same characteristics of the community, right? We're not coming up together to see that peace buildings allows you to be together as human as possible. And that's what we have to do, and we have to build those ideas and ideologies for the people around us and within us, to see that how we are human enough to be human, right? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very. I'll come back to both of you because we talked about education curriculum. I have my own story on that. Before that, I would like to ask a question to Zhao, being a UN staff member, and we do have UN staff members here as well in attendance. So it's not just to Zhao as well. I mean to other people as well who are listening. How do we, we know that there is a newly formed Office of Counterterrorism and Violence at the United Nations, but they do not have the youth mechanism or the framework for them. And as you have the youth framework, and many other department and agencies have the youth framework, so how do you think, Jao, that young people within the UN network or within the UN framework can advocate about youth actually coming and coming with the ideas or coming with the programs and projects where they want to do the counter violent extremism?
Not an easy question, but no, I think it is all about finding the correct entry points. I think part of the reason why, for instance, the UN Office for Counterterrorism may not still have a robust framework for youth, it's because it is largely driven by member states. And I think a lot of the member states are still in this very limited understanding of the agenda, and specifically limited understanding of how young people relate to the counterterrorism agenda. So I think perhaps more work needs to be done there. However, it's the same challenge we all face everywhere, even within my mandate in UNFPA, working in our population mandate. There are entry points that are easier, but we also have to do a lot of internal advocacy and a lot of convincing with member states. I think specifically in the peace and security sector, when it comes to counterterrorism, there is a clear entry point now, which is since 2015, Resolution 2250 of the Security Council is the first time the Security Council specifically look at young people in a positive lens. So far, all the references to youth in any resolution before that always painted young people as a threat to peace and security, as a risk, or something to be countered. 2250 really turned the table and understood that young people could actually be an asset for peace. They could be change agents. And I think now it changed the conversation because we can go back to member states and say, member states already agree. The Security Council agree that young people have a positive role to play. So then it opens us the door for discussions on how do we move forward. I wanted to also pick on I think in terms of the entry points, Michelle talked a very important point that is understanding, there are education, exclusion, inclusion, all of those are entry points to talk about prevention of violent extremism. I think often, we're limited in the understanding that, terrorists are coming from a particular brainwash mindset, or that they were recruited. What we need to try to understand is what are the root causes of those recruited? What makes those young people vulnerable to this? So, there is the narrative that it's because of religions. There is also the narrative that sometimes it's because of poverty, and that's what pushes them into extremism. And I'm not saying that it's not the case, but I don't think poverty and religion alone will push young people into extremism. I think what evidence has showed us is that the vast majority of young people are not violent. The vast majority of young people are not extreme. And so it's a little bit of a danger that we lump everything together. There is a UNDP study looking specifically on the journey to extremism in Africa. And one of the interesting things that that study shows is that most of the young people that were interviewed that are being rehabilitated after being affiliated with terrorist organizations is that it was not poverty or religion who pushed them. It was experiences of injustice. Was them seeing that one of their relatives was beaten up by the police, or that they face corruption in their communities, things that really trigger them to then pick up arms and get violent. And so it's really understanding how those all those different elements come together and then try to address them. And for that, there is a space for everyone: education, but also access to services, access to, how do we rebuild the trust within institutions and so on. So there are opportunities for us to bring frame within existing frameworks to bring youth perspectives into it. Ali, sorry, I can't hear the room right now. I don't know if the mic is on mute.
Okay, yeah.
Now I can hear. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I was just mentioning about the Security Council Resolution 2250 on youth peace and security, how it's mentioned about and its studies. It mentioned about having young people on the table and rather taking them as a solution and partner rather than having as a problem. So that's a really important thing at the UN framework, that they do have a resolution that say that youth is not a problem, they are a solution, make them partners, but it's a long way to the implementation. So yes, you're absolutely right, and I think using our platform, we will try to do some advocacy on that part. That this should be part of the agenda, that young people should, be included in the mechanism of countering the violent extremism. So important question from both of you coming from the academic backgrounds. What I see, like when I was growing up in Pakistan, I see the curriculum that the curriculum, especially of the Islamic studies and then the Urdu language there, it was developed in 1970, and we're still using that. And we're still using the curriculum of those two subjects, and they were designed in a way that the religion is everything, and the infidel in the context of the textbook. I'm talking about the textbook is starting from grade 1 to grade 6. The Just imagine the age of the kid who's going from grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years studying the curriculum. That's mentioning a lot about who the infidels are, other religion who are not from their religion. And that's, I think, the root of the extremism. And it's not just one country, across the board. Across the board is the same practice of capturing the brain of a child right when he's on the first grade through the curriculum to make him extremism, even in his subconscious mind. Even in the subconscious mind, when you're studying, you automatically, if you would see, I mean, I know if someone is studying in madrasa all his life versus if he would know that I have a friend who is Jewish, what will happen, what he will tell me. Okay, if I would say that, hey, I'm married to a Christian girl, though, it's what will happen. All of these things. So the curriculum plays a very important role, Dr. Bas and Hira. So with you, how you think that when the young people are so much influenced even by the curriculum, how we can handle this situation or counter that situation moving forward?
I think I was reading your mind that's why I say, because it's not only about education. It's also about fostering unity and understanding.
Yeah.
Youth-led organizations are creating space for interfaith and intercultural dialogues. I think you need to have a lot of dialogues because you can be confused because it's not like you choose, they force you because it's not like you got the choice. That's how you got the choice. But with the new idea and technologies coming in, I think if you foster unity and open more dialogue, like I grew up in like my house was like 5 different religions. I don't even know which one I'm supposed to take. The one thing when I start getting out of, I got my own knowledge getting out. I choose my own. I choose my own. Nobody choose my religion. I choose my own because I feel like what they was telling me versus what I feel, it was not the same. And I start getting unity with other people. I know about every single religion. I study them. I respect them. Just because I'm not with you doesn't mean I don't value you. That's why I said we need to start creating space for not even interfaith and intercultural dialogue. It is okay for you to be Jewish. It is okay for me to be a Christian. It is okay for it to be a Catholic. That's you. That's your faith. They have nothing to do our friendship, our trade, our business, our daily life. The acceptance of others, I think that's what makes this. It's not what you learn. I grew up learning Latin, and even I never use it. I think I was going to be a nun. 'Cause I studied so much. Yeah, I don't. It's not that it was a bad thing, because it's a mindset. I understand it's a mindset, but you can rewire that mindset. Start doing other stuff because it's a peer-to-peer engagement. I always saw that.
It is.
Peer-to-peer engagements is very important for young people. Young people also need to understand the other people's languages. Even it's not like speak it, but like you speak a language I don't understand. Just because I don't understand doesn't mean I have to devalue you. Because I think a lot of conflict I see we have in the world is because the basic what it is, the communication line. If we cannot communicate, we start fighting.
Yeah.
Just make sure you respect the other person, religion. If the person tell you in your workplace, today is Ramadan, I'm going to, yeah, just let it be, because that's a choice. We all have a choice. I think this is little things. Not this one, because I have one time somebody told me, "Oh, I cannot come to your church because my church tell me they will excommunicate me." So what a church have to do with your family? That's okay. This is a mindset. This is like your family.
This is an important conversation that we need to talk about.
Yes, it is.
And
It
people
is,
don't
and
want to talk about such things.
yeah, they don't.
And when you don't talk about those things, they grow.
They go, and I
They
don't
grow.
want it to go because is it something was happening in my own family. And last week, my niece was getting married, and my father couldn't come because of religion doesn't allow to come to that church. That shocked us because he been traveling since we born. My father was a diplomat. Therefore, he traveled. Never have one family would say, "I see that man for 2 years," even us. It was an occasion for me, for all of us, to see him. Some of people didn't see him for 20, 30 years. But the mindset of that religion will tell us everybody else is not good, make him lose that special occasion. It's a communication. Even you got kids, you got your friend, educate them. Your religion doesn't have nothing to do with being a human being. We all human. It is my right. It's a part of the human right. I have the right to do whatever I want with me. The same like you got that right. I think if I respect your right, you respect mine, I think we will not even get extremism. It's like the basic. I think we need to go back to the basic of human rights to understand how we can pass that.
Interculture. Yes, over to you
Yeah,
for the
thank you.
same.
This is a very, very vital question to ask because when we think about teaching, when we think about education, when we think about growing up and, having those knowledge as a binary student, we think we started with our mom's lap, right? And that's what Napoleon says that. And moving towards those curriculum and those education system is tough, and living into any country have their own values, own principle, own cultures, right? Even if I belong to one religion and I'm living to another country, I'll opt some of those things because I'm living there and I have those things to carry around, right? But how you're pursuing it's very important. And I would go back to the time when you said that, by, on the age of adolescence, it's important to understand the well-being of adolescent. In the high time, we're not understanding that what our parents went through was the time they went through wars, they went through independence, they went through racism, they went through those fights, those global wars in general in physical environment, versus now we are fighting all those things, or we are stigmatizing this taboo on the social social media, on the world frame streams. Here there is a very very basic variables to understand why this curriculum is not changing, why we are emphasizing those context on a very different way. Like for example, when you ask about in Pakistan, from on the age of adolescent, when the children's mind is growing, he's growing up with the society, we think about three variables. Like it's a global environment, what global environment is showing us, what the television is showing us, what people are showing us. That's a physical environment, what our home culture is showing us, other culture is showing us. And the internal environment, that what you felt inside of you and how you are pursuing inside of you. So these things really caters the adolescent's mind. And the adolescence, the age of till 11, 12, the whole brain mind have been captured by all those thoughts, and that will remain by their 70s, 80s, and the day they die. You can't change that. And how we are pursuing it's very very different, because now what our parents are saying, we're like, no, something that our parents said is extremely correct. We are not addressing that the parental problems are there, rising up the problem are here. There's a problem to understand the nurture and the nature in the environment. There's a problem to understand how we are catering those things within the curriculum of the society. I understand the teachers are going to tell you you're Catholic, you're Muslim, and you're something, and you have to go with those religions. If I study in the United States for all my time, I'll study those principles and those values, right? Versus somewhere else, I'm not going through the country's curriculum or what. But back in Pakistan, if you're saying yoga, Islamic studies will tell you everything about what Islam has taught, and what how things have been, Muslims have fight, and how they were the warrior, and this is the best thing. It's nice. Okay, but how we're changing it, it's important for the teacher to change it. You have to revise the strategies of changing it. I agree with Joe that he says the approach of understanding the counter-violence extremism is important. When we teach about those past experiences, past wars, and we tell that those were the warriors, and those were how God is great, and how we all are together, we need to figure out on revising those principles. What our religion had taught us was also so many things about counter violent extremism, like other religions, right? It was never the case that they were all Muslims and there were no Jewish and no Christians, and it was never the case they were all Christians or Catholic Christians and Jewish and there were no Muslims or Hindus, right? Everybody was everywhere. On every year of this world we all are present, and every ruler that came in had countered all those problems and had those solutions. That's why they are called as a warrior, and they're highlighted till the history that they did something good, right? So why how we are presenting those ideas is important. I believe there is a problem with the pastor generation, and I believe what UN says that the youth should be the partner here, is because what the first generation, like say my the grandparents have came through was a trauma, independence trauma, religion anxieties, and they were born through that. And what they come through, they teach the parents. Now when it comes to, we hit the 21st century, everything is modernized, advanced, and now people are open and vocal. And they're not open and vocal because they had to be. We get the avenues to be open, we get the technology to be connected together, and we get those forums to speak about the dialogue. And there we have to figure out how we will continue to be having an open dialogue, maintaining discipline, peace, discipline, and addressing that there are different people than us, and they live in the same place, and they have two hands and two legs and same two ears to listen. So this is, they are human to figure out, and then we are human enough to be figuring out that the religion have its own value as your own, just like as your surname have your own value as their own. But as you meet and greet people, the perception should be different. The perception should be more communicable, about friendly, and making that community engage in a larger perspective.
Thank you. Does anyone in the room have any questions from the panelists? Okay. Yes, you first.
Me first.
Yeah,
Hi, should I say that?
as Rafael.
Larissa, quick comment and then question. So I did some research work with Somali refugees on Al-Shabaab and like their recruiting methods and things. So this session was something I'm very interested in. And one thing that all the youth said was like, the way that they're putting forth their religion is not religion. That's not our religion. Like in Islam, you don't kill. They are not like Muslims to us. And so my question is like, how do we ensure the separation of like, basically like religion and violent extremism so that we're not kind of putting forth Islamophobia throughout the world in these whole policies?
Who would like to answer? Joel, you.
I can try. No, I think it's an important point, and sorry, I'm hearing echo. Maybe you can mute the room. Sorry. So the issue is really like not necessarily separating. Oh, perfect. Now I can. Thank you. I think it's understanding that there is a relation between religion and violent extremism, but not in a negative way. I actually think religion can be the solution. Speaking, you mentioned Al-Shabaab. Speaking from my experience in Somalia, I can tell you that the narrative of countering and preventing violent extremism at the national level is completely different than the international narrative. At the country level, the government is Muslim, the majority of the population is Muslim, so they don't really have that stigma or the stereotype that Al-Shabaab is perceived as a religious extremist group. It's not. It's a political group that have a very specific political agenda, and they are basically trying to push that through violent extremism. In that regard, religious leaders actually have a very crucial role to play in the prevention and really helping, especially young people that somehow end up being radicalized. And as I mentioned, not because of religion, perhaps because of poverty, perhaps because of experience of injustice, perhaps because of marginalization, or a combination of all of that. Sometimes the religious leaders actually have a crucial role in talking to that young person and helping that young person to understand that perhaps that's not the right way. So I don't think violent extremism and religion are completely detached, but I don't think it is the relation is in a negative way. I think it's actually quite positive. And I think, Ali started this conversation saying how uncomfortable some people feel when we're talking about countering violent extremism. And I think perhaps this uncomfort comes from the stigma. And unfortunately, some people do use this narrative to promote anti-Muslim values, to promote discrimination and targeting specific races, specific populations. I think we shouldn't be afraid of talking about violent extremism, and we shouldn't be afraid of talking about what are the possible solutions, but also being very clear that the solutions is not going to be one size fits all. Each country has its own narrative, its own context, and we should be open to understand that.
I think we all agree in this room that climate change is real and we also have to take care of our environment. I'm just gonna give you a small example. Just a few days ago, German climate activists sprayed orange paint onto the Berlin's Brandenburg Gate to raise awareness about the climate change. So my question is, how can we determine and draw the line between good extremism and bad extremism, and if there's a differentiate?
All right.
So let me go because I have done some studies. It's the method called direct activism and then indirect activism. So I'm a big advocate of indirect activism. That's advocacy, peace, talks, and doing things. Then the direct activism sometimes, most of the time, leads towards the violence of the kind that you say that. You mentioned one example I saw that there was a CEO of some European airline. He was making a press conference. I think that was in Europe somewhere. And the group of climate activists came and they smashed the cake on his face and then went away. And then, I mean, okay, we advocate about climate activism, but that's extremism.
Yes, exactly.
That you're going extreme with such sort of thing, and those comes into direct action. I mean, there are other direct actions. We saw the climate walk here in New York City last week. That was peaceful. That is a peaceful direct action that you can take. We have a team member. She was the age of 17 or 16 last year when I met her, and she used to sit in her summer holidays every year right in front of the UN with the play card for the climate action. That was a direct action, but a very peaceful way. She would not talk to anyone, just a play card all day long when she was 16 years old. Now she's part of her team. Her name is Rachel. She's part of her team. And so that's a peaceful, now she's part of her team. We are nurturing how she can, be more a better climate activist, do advocacy and take more peaceful things. So I think that the borderline is very clear between how you take direct action and how you do the indirect action. I always prefer indirect action, especially when we have social media. We have so many different tools. We have Facebook, Twitter, um, Instagram, TikTok, XYZ. We can use those to give the message out, and that's very effective because those electronic apps have big outreach. For example, IYC is growing just because of social media and doing outreach. So I think that's on my part. You wanted to answer?
Well, Ali said it all about the direct extremism. I was just like to conclude both the last question and this question on this note that when right is too right to be good is not right. You understand? So, when you start believing on your own perception and you think that, you're not stopping, you learned everything, you have done everything, and now you'll take action with all the principles that you have on your knowledge, then not doing something right. When it comes to the Islamic phobia or on the climate action, we need to define those principles, that what is the direct approach of doing this. If in Islam we says, I'm the man, I'll do something and I'll do this and I'll do that. No, we're not on the learning canvas. We are, as a human, we are on the learning canvas, and every day we learn different things, and we do wrong things and we learn again the right things. But if we start thinking about on the direct action that, we'll do everything right and correct, we are on the extremism side. And then that's how we conclude on our mindset of doing something really wrong. And that's how, brainwashing takes part, and that's how, this all things happens, violence happens in the country. So yeah,
Thank you. So we'll move towards the conclusion, and we will go for the concluding remarks. We're gonna start with Dr. Bas for the last final concluding remarks before we close the panel.
They have one thing we didn't mention about mental health, because those type of extremist action can cause mental health, and we have to be aware of that. And they always use people who's less vulnerable to attack. Therefore, when we get those type of counter wisdom, we have to really understand and support it, because as society, we need to recognize and support those remarkable effort also the young people been doing, because some of them really put the school, because I know a girl who really put the school on hope to talk about violence among girls, because she was attacked. She say, if I can stop one person, my life will be okay. You don't have to try to do everything because you're only one person, but a simple step, start in your neighborhood, and the conversation of somebody, well, you can say that. Also, we can promote education and awareness because that's very, very important. Anytime they have something you don't see the reasoning behind it, that person is not educated because it's lack of education. Like, that's why I tell people when somebody says something to you or you're passionate, because they have nobody who can tell me they're passionate about youth. Because you can wake me up. I'm talking about you from now all because for me, they not only the future of tomorrow, they are the future of now. And because of that, I give them the space, but at the same time, I show them how to respect value. My rules number one, if you want to work with me, you need to know the human right, all the article. Because by knowing that, it's very, like, it's so important and it's easy for you to understand anything else I'm going to tell you because you already integrate all those value on you. You cannot give what you don't have. The reason you can give peace because you're in peace. The reason you can talk about climate change because you understand climate change. The reason you can talk about sustainable development because you understand and you got the value of it. Therefore, any youth, I make them basic, the basic of human rights. That's why we promote education and awareness. You foster and also interfaith and intercultural dialogue. You empower peer-to-peer engagement because that's very, very important. We have to utilize social media for good because it can be good, it can be bad. We have to encourage leadership. Don't just tell the youth you got the place at the table, and when they're on the table, you even put the chair so low they cannot even see the table. That's mean put them at the table and let them be at the table, let them participate at the table. Support mental health because sometimes you may not know they have a lot of mental health issues and something back, like say if you was in the family in Pakistan, you know something. We have something they call culture shock. Culture shock is a mental problem. We come to America, everything is different. You don't even know where to start because it's so different. Especially if you come to New York, you got lost. That is a culture that it become a mental. That sometimes we don't take small thing like that can impact for us to become extremists. And because we have to understand they have some kids who right here, they took them to go to another country to do bad thing. Why? Because say culture shock. They say, oh, I can give you better. But if they have a conversation peer to peer, doubt that. And I encourage the youth also to work with policymakers. In your country, in New York, whatever country, write letters. I make the youth write letters all the time. I don't care if they're going to answer me 1 year, but I'm going to write it anyway. And keep a copy. I always say, I'll send you a copy and this date. You didn't answer me, I'll send you a copy if you didn't say it until somebody answers you because you need to be at the table and you have to your voice. And you need to build alliances. Networking and build alliances. That's very important. I have faith on the youth because they have a lot of energy. They can do it, but they need the right guidance.
Thank you. Ciao. Over to you for the concluding remarks.
Thank you. And sorry, I will have to leave very soon. But just to say, I think this conversation has been fantastic. I think, a couple of highlights for me is really the understanding that education is the key. And I think we need to use more spaces like this one to talk about this topic. I think people need to lose their fear to, discuss violent extremism, discuss what are the root causes of it, but also try to really come together to discuss what are the solutions for this. I think, if something is very clear is that right now, the siloed approach that we talk about counterterrorism, that we have somebody else talking about education, somebody else, that's not necessarily the most effective. So I really hope that spaces like this can help us to break the silos and really bring everybody together governments, civil society, the UN agencies, and really us all trying to figure it out. It's a challenge that it is growing. It's in a very scary scale, but I think we are not being able to grow our response in the same speed. So I really hope that this is just the beginning of a bigger conversation, and that we can continue discussing more and benefit from everybody's expertise that is in the room. And I'm unfortunate, I'll apologize also to Michelle. I'm not going to be able to stay on. I have to go to the other event, but thank you so much for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Lastly, I would like to give you the floor for the final concluding remarks.
Thank you so much. What I think is what Albert Einstein says: the source of knowledge is experience. And I think within today, until now, we have experienced a lot of change. We have bought so many extremism societies. We have seen wars. We have seen everything that was possible for us to see. But now, as we have experienced those things, it's time to grow something that is positive with us. It's time to build a tree with good soil, perfect sunlight, that can give all of us a good and sweet fruit. So that's very important. We need to nurture the society with all the good and the bad aspects, and let them know what could be wrong and what could be right in a very cliche way. And with this discipline, I would love to end this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm very glad that after 3 unsuccessful tries and fourth time we were able to pull a really good panel on the youth countering violent extremism, and we're gonna continue these conversations in every edition. It's just I find the excuse of International Peace Day to make it happen. That it has to have it. Last time I have it in the agenda in San Francisco, I have to remove it because no one wants to speak on it. Like literally on the day when the session was supposed to happen, I have to remove it from the agenda in San Francisco a few months ago. So there are challenges on having such conversation, but are very deep conversations we need to have, because these issues are causing a lot of problems, the greater problems, and you don't want your tax-paying money to go towards these solutions where we can actually help resolve these issues, and the tax money can become towards helping homeless or putting people to education and creating new jobs. So thank you so much for everyone joining us online for this conversation, and thank you everyone who are here. Thank you to Jao who's not here, but thank you Hava that you invited Jao and make it happen. And thank you Dr. Bas for agreeing to speak on it. And thank you for you to agreeing to speak on it, because we unfortunately the other speaker on the panel was a diplomat who refused this morning to speak on this topic because and he apologized, said that's a sensitive topic, but I'm like, all right, we will have this conversation anyway. So thank you so much for joining me. You can stop.